Hi guys, welcome to part 3 of this 3-part series introducing you to web coding and basically creating a very simple web page in your lunch break. So far we've been through 2 topics. We've been through HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, which basically says what is on the web page, and we've been through CSS, cascading style sheets, which apply styling and make what's on the web page look pretty. The third topic, and the one we're going to do now, is JavaScript. JavaScript is a very big topic. We can do it for days, weeks, months, years. It's a lot to it. The challenge here is just to give you a quick overview in 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, just going through very basic introduction about what JavaScript is, what it does, and why you might want to use it, and why you might want to learn about it. So let's get started. So we had our website file here, and we're going to open that. We're still using Notepad, just using basic tools that pretty much everyone has on their computer. If you're on a Mac, then obviously the Mac version of Notepad will be fine. And this is what we had at the moment. So we had our HTML with a couple of HTML tags. So we had the title, my first web page, H1, and the paragraph. We also applied some styling. So our background color, H1, and paragraph color, and we centered it. And the styling, the CSS, was all done within these 2 style tags. Okay, so we're going to open this with whatever web browser you like. You can use Firefox or Microsoft. We're going to use Google Chrome. Bring it over. And this is what we had so far. Very basic, but hopefully you're starting to get the idea. Now, at the moment, this is static, okay? It does nothing. It's just going to stay there and say, my awesome web page, here's some text, blah, blah, blah. What JavaScript does is it makes the web page dynamic, responsive. So when something happens, something else will happen, if that makes sense. So, for example, say I move the mouse over here, I could have certain text pop up. Let's say I clicked a button, I could have an alert show up. Let's say I entered some text into a form, something else might happen. JavaScript makes a page dynamic. It makes things happen that you set based upon rules that you give it. Let's do an example, and hopefully it will make more sense. Okay, so let's just get our text editor back up. And I'm just going to try and get these both on the one page. So that we can see them side by side. Okay, now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of HTML tags that we are going to use in order to set our rules for JavaScript. So I'm going to create a button, which is a separate HTML tag, which will create a button on your web page. So all I need to do is do an opening tag in HTML and spell it right, button, closing tag, / button. Save, and this will create a button. You can see this little guy here, that's a button. So the browser, when you type in a button, it knows that I'm going to create a button. Now it's very small at the moment because we haven't given it a name. So what I'm going to call it is just, you can call it anything you like. I'm going to call it Click Me. Save, reload. There you go, that's a button. So if you didn't know that, that's a very easy way just to create a button. It's built into the browser. So those button tags are good. Oh, it still works, but I should close that off. Those button tags are really good ones to know. I'm also going to create just an empty div, which we're going to use to make JavaScript insert some information into our website. And this div, I'm going to give an ID, which we'll come to shortly, which allows JavaScript to reference this particular div. I'm going to call it my div. Okay, so that's set up. If I save and refresh that, you're not going to see the div at the moment. It is empty, but you will see the button. Okay, now let's get into the exciting part and start doing our JavaScript. So JavaScript goes within script tags, which are the last thing we're going to put at the end of our HTML body tag. So just above the body, last thing is going to be script. Opening and closing. Just like our CSS up here, which went between the style tags in the head section, the script section, the JavaScript goes within script tags within our body section. So remember that. Okay, and now within here, we are going to write our JavaScript. So probably the two main real basic elements I think that you're going to come across first when you're doing JavaScript are variables and functions. Okay, basically everything in JavaScript uses variables and functions really thoroughly, and they're just things that you just use every day. So a function is basically says what is going to happen. So a function is something that does something. Alright, so just try and get your head around that. And a variable is an input which we can use within our functions. And you can use variables to assign values to data, basically, and it can be quite complex data, it can be quite easy data. We're going to use easy ones at the moment, but we will get more complicated as we go in future videos. So let's do a variable first, and a variable can be written as var equals, variable, and then the name of the variable. So let's say I'm going to have a variable which is name. I'm going to say equals Tim, my name. So we've assigned a variable to a value. So now instead of within our code writing Tim every time, we can use the variable name, which is name. I might call it my name. You can call it anything you want. So variable my name is Tim. Okay, variable name sounds like, I don't know, maybe you have to write variable name because it's the name of the variable, which isn't the case. Alright, so we have our variable there. And what we could do, just to test out if our variable is working, is another very, very common thing in JavaScript, which is logging information out to the console, which basically just tests that everything's working, I suppose, or provides information. So what we can do is we can say console.log brackets, and then I'm just going to say my name. Alright, so that's done. So that's our first bit of JavaScript. Now, what's the console? What's logging? Well, the console is within the browser in front-end JavaScript, like we're doing at the moment. And so if you open up your browser and you hit F12, it will bring up the DevTools. And within the DevTools, you have all these things, one being the console. So if we click the console, then console logging will push our information into here. So I've saved that. Now if I refresh my page, we should see Tim appear here because we console log my variable and we assigned my variable to the value Tim. So let's refresh and see what happens. Yay, there it is. So we've just console logged Tim, or my name variable. Now I can change this, obviously assign a different value. Let's say my name is Sue. Save. Refresh. Sue. So you use console log basically to test out that your code is working, and if you do this in small steps, it really helps you as you go along. Okay, so that's great. Now, what we are going to do now is create a function, and we're going to do that using our button, so that when I click this button, this function does something. Okay, so let's get into it. Alright, so for my function, I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it my function. Now, after you name the function, generally you will do two opening closing brackets followed by opening closing curly braces. Now within these curly braces is where you're going to write what you want your function to do. Within these two brackets, you can use these to pass in information which the function may need, but we're not going to use that at the moment. Often those brackets are empty. So yeah, for now, just realize that you write function. You can give it a name. You don't have to give it a name, but then it's followed by brackets, which can take in information the function may need, parameters, and then you have the curly braces, which contains the code that basically tells the function what it's going to do. Alright, so we're going to call it my function. Okay, and within the my function we are going to tell it what we want to happen. So in our case, what we're going to do is when someone clicks the button, we are going to make an alert drop down from our HTML page, from our web page, and it is just going to say, "Hi, Sue." or hi, whatever name you assign your myname variable. So in order to do that, we're going to say function, my function, opening closing brackets, opening closing curly braces. Within our curly braces, we are going to say alert, opening closing brackets, and within our alert, we're going to write what we want to see in our alert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use backticks to put a string. You need to use either backticks or commas or double quotes. The backticks is a newer syntax which you'll probably want to use, and it allows us to easily insert variables within our string. So what I'm going to say is hi, and now I'm going to insert our variable here. So in order to do this, you use $, and then opening and closing curly brackets, and then you put the name of your variable. So my name is Sue at the moment. Okay, so this should say, hi Sue, and staying within our backticks, I'm going to write whatever I want. You just clicked the button. Okay, so that's great. So we've got our variable and we've got our function. Now, nothing's going to happen yet if I click this button though. Why not? Because we've declared what our variable is, and we've said what our function is, but we haven't said when this function is going to fire. So let's do that now. And I want it to fire when we click the button. So now we have our variable saying what the name is, we have a function saying what we want to happen, and we have our onClick method which says when we want this function to happen, in this case when we click the button. So let's try that now. Reload and click, and we get this alert drop down. Now alerts are built into the browser. It's just a method we can use. I'm sure you've seen them before. They are very common in a lot of web pages you use. So we click the button, something happens. So that's JavaScript. It has made our page some way dynamic. Okay, remember we started out, it was just this, sat there, said my awesome noob web page. Here's some more text. That's it. Doesn't matter what you do, it just says that. So JavaScript provides this functionality to our web pages, which makes them responsive. So if the user does something, then something can happen. So yeah, it's very handy. Alright, so now what we can do, obviously, because we assign this a variable name, we can change this again. So let's say my name's not really Sue, it's Tim. Let's refresh that and make it say hello to me. It's saying hello to me. Excellent. Okay, so that's the alert, and what I wanted to do was just do one more thing with JavaScript, and rather than making an alert drop down, I want to insert some HTML into our code so that when I click the button, some more writing will appear within the web page. Okay, so what we're going to do is make a pretty simple change. Now, I'm going to comment this out by using 2 slashes. In JavaScript, commenting it out is 2 slashes. So that means that we keep the code there. We don't delete it because, you know, we like it, we might want to use it again. But commenting it out means it will stop working. So now if I refresh and do that, nothing happens because we've commented it out. I take away these comments again, save, refresh, it works again. Okay, so let's comment it out for now. And within our function, we're going to make it do something different. So rather than an alert, we're going to insert some HTML when the button is clicked. So in order for that to happen, all we need to do is change our code within our curly braces, which, what I said before, tells the function what it's going to do. So we're just going to change that. So instead of saying alert, we are going to say document dot get elements by ID, and we're going to reference our empty ID tag, which we made up here before, which doesn't show up at the moment because it's empty. Okay, and the ID was my div. Now we're going to say dot inner HTML. And so what that's going to do is within our div, we are going to place some HTML when the button is clicked. So what do we want our inner HTML to be? Well, we're going to make it a string, which means that we either use the backticks, the quotes, or the double quotes. I'm going to use backticks because it makes it easy to insert names of our variables, for example, and it's the most modern method. So I am basically going to say the same thing again. Rather than typing it out, I can copy and paste. Let's save time. Now again, that will give us, hi, whatever your variable name, you just clicked the button. And what we might do is put this within h1 tags. So make an opening h1 tag at the start of this, so it'll be nice and big. And at the end, closing h1 tag. Okay, now save, refresh. Now let's see what happens when we click the page. And there you go. It's written some text dynamically within our web page only when something happened, only when a condition was met. In this case, the condition was someone clicking the button. With JavaScript, you can have many different events. So, you know, if someone hovers on a particular paragraph, you can make it do something. If somebody enters text somewhere, you can make it do something. There is a lot of things you can do with JavaScript, like I was saying. This is a basic example. I hope it makes sense. So now we have a very simple website, web page, which has some information on it. It has some styling in the background. We made a certain color. We've centered our text. And it is responsive because we have used JavaScript to make it responsive.